Welcome back to Horrifically Well Read, Blood and Said. Today we are so excited to be talking to the author of PN0K0, which I love that. and it is her debut novella. Welcome, Rachel Dempsey, to the show.
Thank you. Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
We are pleased to have you on.
Yes, and I want to talk about it a little bit later. Your unboxing video with your little puppet guy was wonderful. And
Just talk about it now. You have an affinity
I
for
do.
puppetry
I
and
am a big fan of haunted dolls and puppets and all of those.
Same. So, in my previous life, my previous career, I worked in theater and I didn't get to do as much puppetry myself, but I was friends with a lot of puppeteers. I went to see a lot of puppet shows. So I've also always had an affinity for puppets. And the first puppet, horror puppet that I owned was a skeleton. He still exists. And we called him Mr. Bones. And somehow he was kind of like like a lecherous, I don't know. He'd be like, "Hey, pretty lady." Like he was a creep. That he just took on his own personality. And then the same company made a robot puppet. So I was like, "Oh my god, it's Pinocchio, puppet, robot. I have to have this puppet." So it was very ubiquitous.
Was that Mr. Bones, was he, like, in shows? Like, how did he develop this personality?
Just like in my house, I don't know, like my kids would put him weird places and then make him talk. I kind of worry. I'm both proud and concerned for their futures.
that is a great way to position it. I
I
love that.
I love that. Yeah, so tell us about PNOKO. What is this novella about?
Yes. So, actually the first thing that came to me about this book was the title.
Mhm.
And I just thought I learned it's leet speak. I didn't know that term, but like, license plates, when they use numbers in place of letters, that's called leet speak. So,
Gotcha.
I
Oh,
was
interesting.
contracted to write this novella, which is wild. So, I sold it, I signed a contract, and I hadn't written a word of it yet. So then they
No
here
pressure.
I know, right? Well, it's not a bad problem to have, but it was anxiety inducing for sure. It's a series. They are all standalones, but they are all horror retellings of traditional folk tales, fairy tales, some like Paul Bunyan kind of more, yeah, more folklore
Folktale element,
fairy
yeah.
tale.
Mhm.
So I was allowed to choose from the list, and I just had this. Well, first I did wanna do, Little Red Riding Hood, but there are so many horror retellings of Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
So I put that aside and saw Pinocchio, and I was like, Pinocchio, P-N-O-K-O. Ooh, what if I did kind of a robot thing?" So I started this novella believing Pinocchio, one of the 2 there's 2 POV characters, that he was protagonist and possibly the antagonist. I really thought this is his story. And as I went through the drafting process, I met Joseph, who we open with. So the real premise of this book is that Joseph Zimmerman Jr. is a scientist and he spent his entire life trying to live up to his genius father's expectations. And when the story opens, we have this father son scientific team and they're poised on the brink of curing mortality is what they tell themselves they're doing. So they're inventing a human cyborg hybrid that will allow a human consciousness to live forever. And of course, it doesn't go as expected or well at all. So that's where it takes
Very,
us.
very quickly too, right? So I love there's so much to unpack in, this page count. But first, I don't know if for some reason personally, I ever thought of Pinocchio as basically being a happy Frankenstein story, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
it just I never connected those dots until I was reading this, which is really interesting because, like, you don't think of Geppetto as being as playing God, kind of thing, but really, that is what's happening here. So that was first and foremost, I'm like, "Wow, I didn't realize how easily the story lent itself to being dark," right?
Yeah, and a lot of my early readers actually, including one who's a self-proclaimed Pinocchio scholar, a college friend of my oldest. actually read as a beta reader, because she'd read, like, I don't even know how many translations of Pinocchio. So I was like, "I have to have your expertise on this."
Yeah.
And many, many people pointed out, this is almost as much a Frankenstein retelling as it is a Pinocchio retelling, which I am not unhappy about.
Yeah, and, I think that Frankenstein, again, any story, it's kind of an archetype in a way of the sort of, like, scientist playing, God trying to create life, trying to create, eternal life, whatever it is that you wanna call it, but uniquely positioned right now as we are creating horrific artificial intelligence and, this artificial life that very similarly, to your story, it's developing its own consciousness and developing its own desire to live, and that can lead to very negative things for human beings, right?
I wish it was less timely in a way. Like, the marketing part of me, of course, is like, "Yay, timely."
Right.
And obviously that was front of mind for me as an artist, watching my own art be threatened, watching the creations of my fellow writers and other artists being pirated and stolen. So it was front of mind. I do wish it was more fiction than science, and unfortunately, it's not. And I felt really strongly about the Ray Bradbury quote that's in the beginning about, yes, it's timely to a level that is deeply uncomfortable right now, but it's not new, because I think the Ray Bradbury quote does say, "We don't need to worry about the robots taking over or the toys," is what he refers to them as. It's the grown boys, men playing with toys. Dangerous.
Right.
That's what we need to be afraid of, and that fear is not new, it's just escalated right now.
Yeah. It's just a new medium for which they're in right now. I think that is definitely AI. Actually, one of the podcasts I was listening to last night said, according to them, that the top 7 AI firms are equivalent to a third of the stock market, and they all just keep passing, like, essentially the IOU around to each other of, like, floating the money until things figure out, but, it just feels like that's the hot thing. It's like it's an arms race right now, regardless of what the consequences and things are. But, it's been lots of things, over the years of what they're gonna I was saying to my friend today, I was like, when radium was like the
Mm,
big thing and they're like, "Oh, it's gonna be this miracle thing, everybody get in on this, right?"
Nuclear
And
power,
yes, and it's
mhm,
just like at whatever cost, it's like, let's not research it well enough. Let's not figure it out. Let's
mhm.
just play with it or let's look for capital gains and let's just go with it.
or it really feels like they're like, "No, we totally understand this isn't dangerous and probably
And I
horrible,
don't care.
and we don't care." Yeah, right?
Yes. Yeah. I thought
As
about
we
so
as
there's
we record during a massive heat wave where the heat domes over us, it's like, are we finally accepting the climate change is
Yeah,
real, or is it still a hoax?
yeah,
was it ever
yeah,
No, I don't think it ever was, but I'm
yeah.
saying even for the ones that said that,
Yeah,
like,
oh, yeah.
are
No,
they
no,
there
she
now?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. The same people are talking about how many people are at the Great American State Fair right now, right? So
My god.
I was gonna throw Reese Witherspoon under the bus because she can handle it, where she came out and said, "Oh, you need to get on board or be left behind."
Yes.
It's so easy to track the people who are defending it the hardest, or the people that are
Yes.
invested the most, and the people that are going to be harmed the most, or the people that are harmed the most every single time. It's always the most marginalized people. Those are the neighborhoods that are gonna have these, ginormous warehouses move in and take over. Those are the people. I recently read a book called Unmasking AI, and it talks about some of the first AI training modules and how it wouldn't recognize faces of color. It's just the same shit, difference
Yeah.
packaging.
Didn't they just get, I forget, what was it, what is it? Not Workspace, but, I used to use it at my old job, but basically it's an HR software that got in trouble for using AI for discriminating against.
right, like, names and, like,
Yeah,
it was looking through resumes and
yeah,
throwing them away, yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm really, to conclude in my point here, I haven't bought this book yet, but I want to. It's a nonfiction. It's the Reverse Centaur.
Oh, yeah.
with
It
the
was
AI,
yeah,
and you can look that up if you wouldn't mind.
yeah,
But what they were saying is the way this person described this, I was like, "This is exactly it." He was like, "AI is like this generation's asbestos, and we're gonna be scraping it out for years to come." And I was like, "That's wicked cool." And they were saying the reason why it's the centaur is because you're a head, like you're a body, you're a human, and the legs of a centaur just do whatever the brain says, right? Like whatever the human body and brain says to do, the legs do it. But reverse centaur is AI is now basically taken over the human brain. And now we just are left with the human body to do
yeah.
whatever
Do
the
it.
manual sort of thing is that it's telling. And it's really fascinating. So I would like to look into it more as I feel like this is our second recording this week of dealing with someone who has AI themes,
Yeah,
and I love that because it is scary to most of us.
yeah, it's The Reverse Centaur's Guide to Life After AI by Cory Doctorow, so
Okay. It sounds a little bit like a non you said it was nonfiction. Yeah.
mhm.
Yep, yep.
Non version of Paul Tremblay's that came out today about dead but
The
dreaming electric
what is
sheep.
it? Sleep. Yeah,
Dead but
dead.
Dreaming of Electric Sheep, yeah.
Yes, yes. I plan to read that. I think
Mhm.
you already read it, Adam. Or
No, I have not,
oh,
yeah,
okay.
I love Paul, but yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure and yeah, that's a great double feature right there, PN0K0 and Paul's book, but
Listen, book it, and then also read that unmasking one that you said. It's like
yeah,
we'll just have a people have a book reading to my weekend's booked. It's like, wouldn't that be fun to do like such an AI themed
But
like
themed, yeah.
stories and
yeah, that's a book club right there for, like, some discussion for that. I think it's really interesting, though, you touched on Reese Witherspoon, and I also saw Michael Caine sold his voice, and they're
No,
doing, like, a yeah, they're
that
doing
is
a well,
bullshit.
they're doing a version of the Odyssey where they just they just feed in the Odyssey and put it in his voice, and that's gonna be released right before Christopher Nolan's movie comes out, but it's really odd to me how much film is embracing AI. Like, the artists that you would think, like, in, like, A24, really
that was a
famously this week. It's shocking, like, to me, especially when, like, A24 directors are like, "This is disgusting, I would never do this." Like, the Backrooms director was like, "Absolutely not, like, that's terrible. If, you're cutting corners in this, it's like, where else are you doing that? It's so lazy," when it comes to stuff, and then it's like like 2 weeks later, they release that they're getting this huge, infusion of money, and obviously that's a big part of it is money.
I think it's
Um,
probably the only part of it, honestly.
but it's just so weird for a medium that's based on
Artistry.
artistry. It's based on, human beings doing something, that would embrace it so wholly, like, I know they're like, "Oh, well, visual effects and all that kind of stuff." It's like, it's not the same at all.
I feel like my therapist would be like, "Rachel, you're trying to make logical sense out of kind of insane actions." Like, "No, you wouldn't do that because
God.
you prioritize art and creativity and the human experience, but there's people in this industry, in any industry, don't
That
prioritize that." And
prioritize money. Okay,
listen,
thank
it's
you
not
for saying
money.
that. Like we always say this show should be like therapeutic, and that is an excellent nugget that I'm gonna hang on to for
Mhm.
sure. A lot of times I'm guilty of saying put that on a t-shirt, but for
Yeah.
that I'm like, put that on my bathroom mirror so I see that every morning of like, you're probably guilty of assigning how'd you say it?
Logic to
Logical,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's the other
prioritizing
one,
human
yeah.
beings and
I just
artistry.
saw Jeff Bridges because he does music, that he's like, "Oh, I don't even have to pay for studio musicians anymore. I just use this AI program to make my music now," and I'm like, "Jeff Brid not the dude, man, come on."
It feels a little bit like another, horrible version of Me Too. It's just like one after another of people that you thought, "No, not them, they would never," and that, like, it's heartbreaking to have
Listen,
some people.
I'm leaving this podcast right now. She's dropping way too much shit. She's blowing my mind. This is early on. I don't know how to handle this. That is the honest to God truth. It is the
Yeah,
next version of Me Too, where you're like, what a fucking sellout. I can't believe that.
Yep. And the
yeah,
and the lack of accountability. I
right.
Like
That
just
it's
being like, it's normal. It's
mhm.
okay.
It's like, yeah, if you make it that way, like, it's not, but if you say it enough times, people are just gonna be like, "Oh, everybody's doing it." I'm like, "No, they're not," like, and they shouldn't be. And it's even crazy in the book space because, you know, don't wanna, like, drag names any more than they already have, but,
Mm.
you know, there are some very famous instances of books that were said that they had AI in them, uh, and really ruined the person's career and the release of the book without any real evidence that it was the case. Whether it was or not is, like, kind of beside the point. So, then then you have other authors, an author that has talked about being a liar before about their book, saying, "Yeah, I use it and too bad," and it's, like, the Barnes& and Noble pick of the month and stuff, you know what I mean? So it's just, like,
Just
it's
another
so
example I would argue that where you're gonna see the most marginalized writers be the ones that are attacked, and they are gonna be the whipping boys and whipping girls and whipping
Well,
people, while
that
the
already
more
happened.
people just sail above it.
Yep. That
yeah,
already happened to our friend. I was Royal Coffee's been on the show here already, and he was saying they were saying that like their new book, The Canaries, is like being accused of like the drawing and everything. And he's just, they're like, what the fuck?
yeah,
I've gone through multiple iterations. I'm working with an actual art. Like, what do I have to do? And it's just like, I think that there's this level of accountability, but at the same time, there's this, as they were kind of talking about, like this intense witch hunt for it now. And that part, I know
it's like
he
a balance,
they're
I
not
guess.
the other they're not the only author that have talked about this, but it's certainly it's like, is that the goal? Is that part of the unseen goal of, like, they know that the artistry community isn't, you know what I mean? Maybe it's not the original intended consequence, like Benadryl helps for your hives or, whatever,
Mhm.
but it also makes you sleepy, right? And
Yeah,
it's like, it's not a bad thing probably that if we're all attacking each other and, going after these things, right?
Them, yeah, totally. It's hard not to be paranoid, and it's not paranoia if it's actually happening.
mhm.
So, yeah, I can easily go to those ways of thinking like, well, if they can just burn down the whole human-generated industry while they're at it, and then there's
Uh-huh.
nothing, then they'll be like, "Well, of course it has to be AI because these writers just tore each other apart. So, this is all you have now."
Yep.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing that's happened in, the disinformation that's happened in so many other places that it's like when you start to question like basic truth, everything it kind of goes by the wayside and it's like, you just kind of create this atmosphere where they're like you accept everything because nothing is real and nothing is, honest and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's really crazy like to see that happen. In the way that, in different spheres, the other thing in music, there was that huge, like, song that everyone was doing, videos for, like the Puerto Rico song or whatever, and it's like and it's AI generated, and it's just like, it never ends. So, to tie that back into your book, it's very much like, of course, if we're seeing this, like, just on ground level, the things that are happening behind the scenes have got to be 10 times more disturbing than that.
I read something about how the forward-facing piece of AI is meant to be simple. There's this false narrative that like, "Oh, learn to use it or be left behind." No, no, no. AI on this front facing is actually very easy, like a child can use it, right?
Okay. Thank you for saying that. I'm like, this whole time, I'm like, where's the disconnect? What do you mean you have to learn? Like, you mean learn how to generate the prompts? But like, otherwise, it feels like it's idiot proof.
It's just a search box, basically. It's like
Yes.
Google tab bar,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Go
go
on.
ahead.
Yeah, so all the complexity is behind the curtain. That's the part they don't want us to think about, right? Just concern yourself with this very palatable,
Mhm.
vanilla piece that is forward facing, and don't worry about whatever's happening behind the curtain. And I did try to, I didn't intentionally set about to do that when I was drafting, but as I was editing, I did pull back and go, oh, yeah, this is about more than this one robot boy and the relationships around him. There are levels and layers of corruption and trauma and evil and money happening behind all of this.
I love that you can apply that to the individual level or the individual scenario, or, but then you can also see how it can just be, replicated on a much larger scale, and saying like that is the case, right? Because how would you ever know? You have to imagine it's there, but you're not really ever going to see it. And that's the point, right? I wonder if
Yes.
there's gonna be some levels of, like, at some point, like, exposés and things that come out, how long that's gonna take, but I definitely feel like there's a lot of, "Look at this, don't look at that."
Mm.
We are seeing some of those already, right? There's been a few nonfiction written by people who were like, I was on the front line of AI development and then I got out because there weren't enough regulations or it was going in this area that I just couldn't morally stomach. But I think you're right. I think this is just the beginning of that. I hope.
Yeah, and it's funny because, it's being sold so much so that, like, you put a prompt in, like, "Oh, what's the best TV, like, to get?" And you're like, "Okay, what it's really doing is just pulling all of these different reviews that are already out there and all that kind of stuff and telling me so I don't have to do the search myself." So it's like, okay, like, on the surface level, you're like, "That's just analyzing data, there's nothing wrong with that." But then I have somebody close to me that's in marketing that might be across from the computer, but, like, they're basically already marketing and stuff like that is how do you game this system, right?
Oh, yeah,
Like,
it's
they're
how do
already
you
trying to figure out, like, how do I make sure that when someone puts a prompt into AI, that my business, my product comes up? And if you can do that, then it's already fucked. Like, it
Yes.
isn't what it's supposed to be
well, it's so
Well, me
it's not there just yet, but it's going to be that eventually you can just apply for a loan, right through.
through your oh
Absolutely,
my
and
god,
Walmart already has it that, like, if for some reason, let's say you were recommended, like, an air fryer or whatever, that you can just.
click on it and yeah,
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 it's supposed to be anyway. I have not tested that or
yeah,
verified it. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely it. It's the next level of if, it's like if you don't have a website, you're left behind. If you're not doing search engine marketing or, and relevant, then you're left behind. It's like if you're not doing this, it's like you're left behind. And it's always a level of morality that is hard, for me as like it's fun in a way to see which people are like, "I hate this,"
yeah,
"I hate having to do it, I hate that this is a part of it," like, and it's good to, like, be like, "Okay, not everybody in business wants to get in on this," but then, it's this whole thing of like, "Hey, if you don't do this, you're gonna be left behind," so there is a level of, like, morality for me that I'm like,
yeah.
"Can I just pick to sell something else?"
Because
Because I don't
you know,
necessarily want to.
it is about money, but, like, okay, what happens to the small business person? Again, when you talk about the marginalized, you talk about those kinds of
That's
things,
it.
it's like it's gonna affect them the most too.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the sort of fallacy of neutrality too. It's not neutral. There's always the I sign my books, my signature I write, "Don't blame the puppet." It is the hand and the puppet,
That's
always.
awesome.
Well, that's really interesting 'cause there's 2 I guess I wanna talk about the father, the or PN0K0's grandfather. Joseph's father, the doctor senior, he's like a horrible person both personally and professionally, right? And it's really interesting, he's almost really the Frankenstein character, in the book because to him the end always justifies the means. He doesn't care who it is that's harmed by it. But it was a really interesting choice to almost take him out of the game really early on in the book too. So there's an opening scene not with our ultimate, robot boy, but with another one, not to spoil anything, but an accident happens and Senior is basically in a hospital for the entire book. How did you make that choice? Why did you make that choice? It just creates a really interesting dynamic throughout the book.
Well, I think part of my both instinct and then later on very cognitive choice was what if I primarily told this story that while it is about not blaming the puppet, it's about the hand behind the puppet. What if I let the puppet have the voice to tell this story? And so I felt very strongly about I don't want Joseph Sr. to have a voice.
Yeah,
We've given him enough in society, in the world. Be quiet. Like you lay there and you
You be quiet,
watch
yeah.
from a story perspective, watch what happens when those people are left unchecked. But
mm,
I didn't want him to have a chance to defend himself. I didn't want to hear his side of the story. I was like, not interested. Too late. Too bad. I don't care.
Amazing.
Appreciate that.
I love that even more now hearing that. That's just fantastic because it's like, there's points where you're kinda like I'm sure a lot of people would like to ask him some questions as things are happening, but it's like, "No, too bad, bro. You made your choice."
Yeah, we know who you are. Your
Uh-huh.
actions show who you are. And I thought because his son is still given a POV that you get enough of what his creation, because his son is his first creation, right? What
Mhm.
his creation carries from his father. So you and Joseph Jr. is not a hero in the traditional sense. Like he's very morally gray, especially in the beginning, and does some questionable things. So I felt like there was still enough nuance there with his character, but hopefully empathy from the reader because as they go along, they you peel back the layers and you're like, oh shit, that's why he is that way. Okay,
Mhm.
it's getting worse. So yeah, so you can see not that it's forgivable, but that you have some understanding of where the behavior comes from and the trauma that he was carrying from his father.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like it ultimately is a story of generational trauma, right? In the way that it kind of plays out, human and otherwise, in this book, and the way that the sort of weight and responsibility that is put on someone unfairly leads to them making some pretty terrible decisions that can hurt a lot of people around them.
Yeah, and I wanted to carry that through into Pinocchio and just give readers a chance to stop and think because everything, like we just said, there's no neutral tech. It's created by humans, and the most powerful influence is the people who have the most power. So, who are often corrupt, terrible people. So
Mhm.
that's the trauma that our tech inherits. So I wanted readers to just slow down and think, huh, do I want an immortal, all powerful, invulnerable mechanism to have the morality of Elon Musk. Is that what I want? Like,
That's truly terrifying right there, isn't it?
Seriously, I gotta go.
It's like
I can't deal with this anymore. It's mind
no,
blowing.
it's funny because it's
last
like
episode.
yeah, it's the, like, twisted, scary, horrifying version of the, like, Futurama heads, of, like, they create these bodies and stuff, and it's like, "Oh, it's to save these really important people," but it makes me even think about that, it's like, okay, you had to have the money to be able to do that, all of the kinds of things to be able to, be a part of that program, and it's like, generally speaking, I'm sure some of them could be fun to be around, but you can't really find a billionaire that you're like, "Oh, that's a really good person," you know? Because they probably wouldn't be billionaires if they were.
Yes, exactly. I think a lot about a quote that I think it's attributed to a lot of different people, but the basic premise is that just because you can't do everything, we can't fix this. We're all so small compared to the powers that have put this into play, right? Doesn't excuse us from doing nothing. And I think that's what I was hoping to do with this book is yes, it's dark and bleak, but I hope it's hopeful. It's that last chapter. I just was like, I felt so free writing that. I was like, I just love that I can't spoil my own book, but yeah, it just felt very hopeful to write the last chapter, kind of going back to the fairy tale feel of the story.
Yeah.
And I think if we all, as people who care about art, who care about people, the way that we interact with tech, with AI, with each other, if we keep modeling humanity, then it's going to help. It might not save us, but it's got to help.
I
That's
feel
what
like
I have to hold on to.
this is the
Yeah.
like every time I record, I have a good time. Normally, when we get off, I'm like, wow, I really love this part. But this is the fourth prolific thing you've said. I'm loving listening to you. Like, what is your background in? Are you a student of philosophy or psychology? How much time have you spent like thinking about
Pondering
these
the
things?
mortal
Yeah,
soul.
because like you're just obviously you're a writer, and that's what writers
And
do.
was in theater
Right, but
before, yeah.
that's the most brilliant part of writers find words to capture thoughts and feelings so
Mhm.
well of others, and you're speaking them, and it's just so profound.
Well, thank you. I'm deeply moved by that. Thank you. I wish I had like Amber, like a PhD, and oh my god, that resume was so impressive, and I am so excited to read her series. But yeah, I do not have I have an undergrad, a BFA in, drama and English from NYU, so I did delve into the classics and, talked about all of the literary devices very deeply as an undergrad. I have a master's in journalism from Georgetown when I was living in DC. And I do think, as much as I learned about the mechanics of writing and the business of journalism, I also did learn a lot about people from that, from interviewing people, from being around other journalists.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I Journalists are like salespeople that write really well. And
And sociologists.
sociologists and ballsy, like,
Yeah.
cops or, like, investigators. I mean, there is, like it is to me, like, some of the situations that a journalist has to be in, I mean,
Mhm.
they have to be really I almost feel like there's no level of uncomfortable or else they hide it really well because it's like, I don't think I could do that. And I know I'm asked to have a lot of hard conversations and talk about things, but like sometimes when you're interviewing and the things that have to be asked, I'm so impressed by how certain stories are just broken and shared and over the years and years of just as simple as you know, a local news story to something like what Erin Brockovich did and what she
Yeah.
continues to do with the data centers even right now of just,
Mhm.
this dogged determinism to get the correct answers and to say like, I need to, bring this to light,
Mhm.
aka Sunshine Act, right? But
Yeah.
it's amazing. Like I just have a lot of respect for that.
One of the most influential classes I took during that time was an ethics class.
Mm,
People would love to throw around kind of dismissive jokes like, "What do you ethics in journalism?" I'm like, actually, journalism isn't journalism, it's something else, it's propaganda,
Mhm.
unless there's ethics in it." And I think the journalists that I admire most that I met at that time and throughout history are the ones that everything you said, the dogged determinism, the ability to sort of it almost has to be a level of detachment to not over empathize with the people that they're writing about or over villainize people, but they have to establish trust. And
Mhm.
that
yes.
is built around, I'm not going to write you in the most flattering light. I'm going to write the closest thing that I am capable of to the truth.
Mm.
God,
Yeah.
talk about things we've lost in
Yeah.
this
Well,
era.
it's funny because when you say that, it's like journalism is almost science, right? Because, like, when a scientist is testing something, they're trying to prove it false, essentially, and whatever their hypothesis, whatever they wanted it to be, doesn't matter. It's whatever is proven to be true, and, like, a journalist has to be the same way, when I think about, like, what was the movie, The Post, where it was about,
Yep.
breaking the Vietnam Papers and all that kinda stuff. It's like, these were, left-leaning journalists breaking a story that a liberal or, democratic, president and people and stuff were doing wrong things, right? So it's like, it's not about what makes me happy or feel good or proves my side to be right. It's just the truth is the point. And, that's the same thing for science and it's supposed to be the same thing for journalism. So, like, that's really, it's kind of interesting that that is the background because this is so science based in the story too that like, I'm drawing that I'd never kind of thought about that until you just said that now, that journalism again, another T-shirt that you made here, "Journalism is propaganda without ethics
Without
involved."
ethics, I
It's
would
like,
wear the
come
fuck
on,
out of that.
that's amazing.
Please, that's the merch we need. Because I threw my hands up, you couldn't see me, but I was
Yeah,
like, "This is" I mean, and that's what's happening right now, isn't it?
yeah,
It 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 is in a lot of cases now, whether it's spoken or written through pundits or,
mhm,
radio or, whatever it is, but it is propaganda,
yeah,
and, that started with the whole alternative facts and other things, but now it's like the ethics really it just feels like they've really gone out. And a lot of times, even people that I think this is just my opinion, you guys probably know more than I do, but those that, may have ethics, depending on who's owned up at the top now, is it even valuable to break certain stories anymore? Is that even considered journalistic material? Is that what they want? Or
worthwhile.
is it like actually we only want more antagonistic things so
Mhm,
that we continue to gain subscribers, which means we can sell more in ad dollars. Is it really even about, XYZ anymore of what it used to be?
mhm.
Yeah, it's just the clickbait. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can only speak from being I mean, it's been over a decade since I worked for a newspaper company that was both newspaper and significantly online, and, was interesting to me because I had never had this experience before, but the editors about every quarter would come in and join the salespeople. And it's like, what do they have to do with each other? Why are they together? At least that's where my mind was
Mm.
at. And they were going over how many page views. We wrote this story about Paterno. We wrote this. We did that. And it was like, yeah, we were generating 2.3 million for this and whatever. And it's like, okay, well, here's what we think that we're going to be able to like. They were forecasting what they could write about and how many page views that their writing was going to have to get so that we could say we have this many views so that we could sell ads. And I never really considered them to be connected before that moment.
Yeah. Ugh, that makes me think of there's no ethical consumerism in capitalism. Is it like, is there ethical s truth? I don't
Right.
storytelling in capitalism. I think about that all the time as a writer. Like, I wanna write this thing, and then somebody tells me that's not marketable or, which is great in the horror space because I think we have a little more wiggle room than a
Yeah.
lot of other
A lot of fuck off, I'm writing it anyway.
Yeah.
and the readers are hungry for it, and so
Mhm.
thank God for horror
It is
fan.
the rebel genre, I think, of, and I've said this before, but it's we wanna look at the ugly stuff with horror,
Mhm.
I
Yes.
don't want the white picket fence, the capitalistic lie sold to me, but that is a lot of what's marketed in the other genres,
Yeah.
and not in horror,
Yeah. We want some blood to
entirely.
splatter on that white picket fence a little bit, so
Well, it is already splattered. You're just basically these writers are basically saying that, through the journalism or through the things, it's like, no. And there's so many stories that have come out of like, no, this is you're just not looking at it from the right angle. This is
yeah.
actually a dirty fucking fence or something. You know what I mean? It's like,
Well,
no.
it's interesting, been watching the World Cup and stuff like that, that, when I think about it, there's always been, like, editorials, right, in newspapers and stuff like that. But generally, like, kind of like in a soccer game when you're watching it, you have the sort of person that narrates the game essentially, and that's, like, just the real journalism, the truth of what's happening, and then you have the color commentator that's, like, on the side, and he's like, "Oh, he looks tired. Oh, he must have been out late last night," or, "Oh, man, he's not training well," or, "He doesn't look great today," and stuff like that, and it's almost like because people are like, "Oh, that's more interesting," they replaced the narrator with a second color commentator, and now you watch, like, news shows and stuff like that, it's like, why do you need a color commentator on the truth. And you were talking about listening to something talking about the 24-hour news cycle,
And
and
how
once those were
Reagan
created,
repealed it back. And so then the
and it's
birth of,
essentially like
Rush Limbaugh being
but it,
able
like, makes me think of, like, HBO in 1989 when I first got it, and there was nothing but god awful movies except for Saturday night when the good movie premiered, right? They're looking for something to put on because they have to put something on. So, they put on garbage and suddenly garbage caught on, and now all we're watching is
well, it's
garbage.
like, how do you tease this out? How do you
Yeah.
extend the life out of this,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. That
Damn.
that's another theme that I think probably subconsciously, of course, I was like, well, Pinocchio is also a story about truth and lies,
Mhm.
and I couldn't figure out a way to get in the nose growing in a way
Yeah.
that felt not
Organic, yeah.
yeah. So I let that go, but I did, it occurred to me like, "Oh, well, AI can't lie, supposedly they hallucinate." That's sort of how I got into the original idea of Pinocchio having these memories or flashbacks that he was like, "I don't think these are mine, I don't know where they're coming from," and this idea of AI hallucinating. But I did also want to explore that, like, where does truth come from? Who gets to decide what's true and what's not true? Is personal truth more important than universal truth? How do those things talk to each other? So, yeah, I had a lot of fun and fear exploring that topic.
Really quite fascinating, all the things that you had to go through
Mhm.
to think about and what you made decisions to keep in and keep out. But I mean, I think that something like this is, going to be a kind of a treasured piece of, because I love like people might think like, oh, it's just this, but it's not. Like, it's one of those things where it's like such a strong companion piece
Mhm.
to the it's not nostalgia, but it's the life we're living right now. Where it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, this was just normal, or like, this author exposed this right now and brought it up and like, rallied against like you'll forever have this book. Like I am
Mhm.
on record with saying
Yeah.
this is bullshit.
Uh-huh.
I
And
love
go ahead.
that just yeah, that gives me hope. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's like a cultural time capsule.
It
Mhm.
is. It's a beacon too for people that are feeling lost and overwhelmed by
Yeah.
that. And to me, it's, we're not even talking about the environmental effects. It's just you know, it's that old quote that say absolute corrupt
Absolute
power
power corrupts
corrupts
absolutely,
absolutely.
yeah.
And that's what it feels like with the AI because it's asking you to just dumb yourself down. It's just like asking you to lose basic skills. And I love that there's a certain amount of people that are like, no, I refuse to do this. And it's like we're watching a Cold War, but
Mm,
it's among like the masses. And it's like we don't even recognize that it's happening right now. And it's between corporate life and school, all these core institutions that we hold up as pillars, whether it's education or, medical,
mhm.
and just saying like, okay, how are these institutions going to be changed or not? And within that, what is this war that's happening and how's it going to win out?
How much are we gonna accept to
Yeah.
not be human?
Yeah.
As a parent, I feel so strongly about this because it's one thing for me to outsource my cognitive function, as a fully formed adult who's sadly maybe on the decline side of my cognition. But
Same.
for
Yep,
them
feel that.
the great them to
Mhm.
come in and try to do that to my children when they haven't even developed those muscles yet, or they're in the process of developing an entire generation having that stolen from them is infuriating to me. And I didn't even think about that when I chose Pinocchio, but it is fitting that it's a story about a boy, not a man,
Yeah.
because he essentially is a model of what happens when you rob someone of their ability to understand the value of human life on their own. And so,
Yeah.
he does terrible things until he figures it out on his own. That's part of growing up.
That's what's so okay, I was about to make that point. What was so interesting about Pinocchio in this story is that he starts off kind of terrifying. Like, he's really scary, and he does some pretty heinous things very early on into, the reader knowing him, and it's almost like the more he realize it's like he's the opposite of that thing that we just said with the absolute power. It's like, as he realizes how powerful he is, he's more likely to rein it in and not use that power. Whereas I think that most people, the people that kind of are in this book, especially, Joseph Sr. and Ellison, the head of this evil corporation kind of thing, the very Elon Musk like character. But if he's listening, no, it's not. It has nothing to do with you. She's not that they would do the opposite, right? It's almost like the humans are acting inhuman or evil, whereas these beings or the specific being that you're thinking isn't human is acting more human than the other people around them. And that's, obviously I'm guessing you knew that going in that you were doing that, but it is so effective in the way that it's sort of almost like logically speaking, it makes so much more sense to treat other people well than it does to treat them poorly. Unless, of course, all you want is everything for yourself.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's
right.
just crazy.
Yeah, and I sort of with the I went on this journey with the character, which is for me personally, one of the most magical parts about being a writer is to be able to like learn with your character.
Mhm.
And I had that experience of, oh, he was born or created with power, but what he didn't have was autonomy. And so
Mm.
I hope this story illustrates the dangers of robbing someone of autonomy and the damage that that can do to them and the way that they can potentially weaponize that pain and that disconnect from other people. I think when we lose our autonomy, we lose our some sense of our humanity and our bond with other people. So that became a major theme was once he was allowed to build his own awareness and cognition, that's when he stopped doing the terrible things.
Yeah, and the way that
Because it's
that
like they were acting out,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and are just completely unaware of like what is going to happen when they do this or that. But also the way that he allows the people close to him to rediscover their humanity and truths as well is such a cool thing too. And in characters that kind of, you think of as not necessarily one note, but you're like, "Okay, like, this guy needs to get his" it nothing is black or white in this book at all, and, nothing is just purely good, evil, and that kind of thing, and I think that asking difficult questions is really cool, and the fact that it also is a super fun book also, like, you've got some really gross horror stuff in here that I was like, "Oh, man, that was good." Um, and just a really, really great payoff, at the end too, not just in the, like, truths that characters learn about what happened in the past, but then also sort of the really cool climax and kind of the last chapter that you were talking about that's really both fitting and gives you, like, that ending that you really need and want for everybody too. So I really am so happy that we're able to talk to you and read this book because it's one of those books that was a real big surprise for me this year, how much I loved it, and definitely will be recommending it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about it looks like you had a really awesome book launch event and stuff too.
Yeah,
Um, just talk
I
about
did.
the reception has been.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for saying that it brought you joy. It's I always still feel weird as a horror writer being like, "It's so much fun killing little boys." No, like, that's no, 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 no. But, in
Not just
fiction.
little boys, a couple of adult people get it pretty good too later on.
Well, I would say that in fiction. So it's very freeing and strange. But yeah, I can't thank my friends and family and readers enough for the tremendous launch that I had, the people that showed up. And I started my the official event by saying, if this is your first reading, author reading, please don't let it be your last. And of course, I want you to come to all of my events, but please come to other people's events because I knew looking out at the crowd that there were several friends and colleagues of mine and my husband's and relatives who that it really was their first reading.
Yeah.
And I said, now more than ever, it is so vital to support human made art. And this is how we do it. We go out. Sometimes it's hard, especially post COVID. We're still like, "Ooh, I don't know." Like, do we go into these public spaces that are super crowded? And it's gas money is a thing and it's hard. But if you're going to go out into the world and take a stand, I think art is the thing that is worth it. And it's worth the risk most of the time.
You
So,
are
That's like our 5th sticker and
I
T-shirt
know,
that
you are
you've
brilliant to
created for
listen
us.
to.
I love that. So, what's in the future? What are you working on now, if anything?
yeah, I am working on a novel. It was very freeing to write a novella, and that's also kind of a strange thing to say because the little backstory of this is that I was commissioned to write this. I signed a contract. It was an 18-month contract, and then the publisher came back to me and said, "Actually, one of the other authors in the series, just signed a two-book deal with Simon& and Schuster, so he's not gonna be able to make his deadline. Can we swap?" And I was like, "Okay, when's his deadline?" 6 months. Okay. Now I have 6 months to write something, and I don't have a word of it. And I said that at my launch, and my publisher was there, and he's like, "You could have said no, Rachel." I was like, "No, no, I'm not blaming you. I'm actually thanking you because as I told him, however much time you tell me that I have to do a thing is how long it will take me." So, because I don't miss deadlines. I procrastinate, but I do not miss deadlines.
I feel that to my core right there.
Right? So, I wrote a novella in 6 months, and that to be able to say I did that, now I'm like, "Okay, I can do this." Like, I can finish a novel because that's been sort of my Achilles heel, haha, which is a little teaser because the novel is not a retelling like PN0K0 is a retelling. It's not like that, but there's some Greek influence. I'm really excited. It's about another timely cultural thing that's going on, uh, that I find disturbing, and I've already learned that the person I thought was the villain is not the villain, which is always a cool and kind of unnerving feeling as a writer. Yeah, so I'm super excited. I just need somebody to give me a deadline, I guess.
I love that. So, well, hey, you know next season, next year, hopefully, some kind of vague deadline involving that, that we wanna have you back on to talk about something, so, that's awesome, though. We definitely look forward to seeing that out there and, hope for continued success with this one. We'll be pushing it for sure, and, it was really lovely to talk to you. Thank
So
you so
wonderful.
much.
Thanks for all the words of wisdom you passed along.
Well, thank you. Yeah, as a former theater person, I said this at my launch too. I was like, writing can be very solitary. You have to be intentional about making it anything but isolating and solitary. And for me, as much as I love writing, and I do, and reading, I'm a reader first. It's this piece. It's the being in community with other readers, thinkers, writers, social activists. That's the piece that I just brings me joy and life.
Best. It's the best. It's like it's the best thing to be a reader, but then when you get that moment of community and diversity and just, art and politics and all those things like come together, it just feels like you're and I think too even neurodivergence, come together and you're just like, "Ah, my people."
Well, I think
Yes.
that's what it is, yeah, as a reader, it always is that kind of thing that you get, which is like, I never realized someone felt the same ways that I did,
Yes,
that
because I
someone
like my
saw the
private
same things
recharge time.
that well, just in general, like, whatever the book's about, and I think that, the reason one of the reasons we started this is that I think of all of the different ways that you can do that, horror seems to be one of the ones that really gets to the heart of that more than maybe other genres do a lot of the time. So that's, having these conversations has just completely affirmed that. And I don't think there's any better way to end it than to say that because that's what this is all about, that community. And thank you for being a part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for all you're doing to lift up all different voices.
Yep. Thank
Thank
you. Have
you.
a great
Okay,
night.
good night.
Meet you.